approximately 6:07 p.m., but shortly after becoming airborne, the jet encountered a technical issue. Branson National Airport in Missouri, according to the FAA. The aircraft, known for its speed and efficiency, was designed to operate in various weather conditions. Takeoff occurred at approximately 6:07 p.m., but shortly after becoming airborne, the jet encountered a technical issue. Weather conditions at the time included light rain and fog, reducing visibility to about 5 to 7 miles. From the top angle, we can see the experienced pilot made a hard descending left-hand turn with no correctional input. This shows the pilot was likely confused or disoriented once entering the cloud and rain. While modern jets are built to handle adverse weather, unforeseen mechanical failures or environmental factors can still pose significant risks. Tragically, just moments into the flight, the aircraft lost control and crashed near Roosevelt Mall, creating a huge explosion of smoke. The aircraft in question was a Jet Rescue Air Ambulance, a medical flight operated by a specialized air ambulance company. This particular Learjet 55 registered as XA-UCI and owned by the company. The aircraft was on a critical medical transport mission, highlighting the vital roles such flights play in emergency healthcare. According to the company, there were 6 people on board at the time of the crash: 4 crew members and 2 passengers, a child patient and their attending caregiver. These air ambulances are typically equipped with advanced medical equipment and staffed by trained professionals to ensure critical patients receive continuous care while in transit. In this video, you can see the plane dropping fast, almost like a missile, before crashing and erupting into a massive fireball. The explosion was so intense because the jet was fueled up for a long flight to Mexico. With full tanks, the impact causing much bigger fireball than usual. If you take a closer look, the plane appears to be nose down, falling at high speed, almost like a bullet. And with all that fuel on board, the explosion was even more devastating than expected. Interestingly, in the past 2 months, there have been multiple major plane crashes. On January 28, 2025, an $85 million F-35 jet crashed in Alaska. The following day, on January 29, an American Airlines plane collided with a Black Hawk helicopter. Then, on January 31, 2025, a medical plane went down for unknown reasons. In addition to these recent incidents, South Korea experienced a plane crash on December 29, 2024, when an aircraft struck an antenna. Just days earlier, on December 25, 2024, an Azerbaijani plane was hit by a Russian Pantsir missile. All of these tragic events occurred within 45 days, so let's study these plane crashes further. Another round of questions. Why did the F-35 crash again? For the 3rd time in less than a year, a U.S. Air Force F-35 Lightning II, a stealth fighter with a staggering $82 million price tag, has crashed. The latest incident occurred on Tuesday, the 28th, 2025 at 12:49 p.m. during a training exercise at Alaska's Eielson Air Force Base. The pilot managed to eject safely, but the jet was completely destroyed, with its wreckage left burning inside the base's perimeter. This isn't just a string of bad luck, it's starting to look like a pattern. Back in May 2024, an F-35 crashed in New Mexico after a refueling stop, leaving the pilot seriously injured. Before that, in September 2023, a Marine Corps F-35B went down in South Carolina after the pilot ejected mid-flight due to a malfunction. The jet, shockingly, continued flying unmanned for 11 minutes before crashing into a field. Now, in January 2025, the Alaska crash adds another chapter to this growing list of mishaps, sparking even louder concerns about the jet's safety. Why is this happening? Cold weather seems to be a recurring theme when it comes to F-35 issues. Alaska's freezing temperatures have caused trouble for these jets before. In 2018, cold air penetrated the aircraft's systems during landing, overwhelming battery heaters and triggering false alarms. Pilots had to make emergency landings because of this, and Lockheed Martin claimed to have fixed the issue by updating the software to ignore the cold's effects. But with temperatures at Eielson dipping below minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit this week, it's fair to ask if this problem has come back to haunt the jet. Investigators haven't confirmed anything yet, but the Arctic climate definitely makes it a prime suspect. The F-35's cutting-edge technology is another factor that raises questions. Its cockpit is filled entirely with digital screens and software, no traditional analog dials. If you look at the F-16 cockpit, it has a mix of both analog and digital outputs. While this setup offers advanced capabilities, it also leaves the aircraft vulnerable to glitches. In the South Carolina crash of 2023, the pilot's helmet display flickered out during a storm, leaving him disoriented. Following the manual, he ejected when the jet seemed uncontrollable. Later, investigators determined the jet was still flyable, but vague wording in the manual didn't give the pilot much confidence in the moment. Finally, there's the challenge of balancing human and machine. Even experienced pilots can find themselves struggling with the F-35's complex systems. In the Alaska crash, the pilot reported an in-flight malfunction before ejecting. Was it a sensor error, a mechanical failure, or simply the aircraft's technology overwhelming the person in the cockpit? Until the investigation concludes, we're left with more questions than answers. Azerbaijan Airlines Flight J28243 was en route from the Azerbaijani capital, Baku, to Grozny, the capital of the Chechen Republic in Russia, when it encountered a critical situation mid-flight. The aircraft was forced to make an emergency landing approximately 3 kilometers, which is around 1.8 miles away from Aktau, a city located on the eastern shore of the Caspian Sea in Kazakhstan. The incident resulted in the plane crashing on the opposite shore of the Caspian Sea, after what was described as an emergency maneuver. The nearest Russian airport along the plane's intended flight path, located in Makhachkala, the capital of Dagestan.
Introducing the new high-strength bulletproof vest from Apex Armor, now available in the US. For your safety, get it today at 50.
At 10:43 a.m. Kazakh time, which is Russia's Rostov Air Traffic Control Center, received a signal indicating that the crew had decided to divert the flight to Aktau due to adverse weather conditions in Baku and Makhachkala, a city in Russia's Dagestan region. At 10:53 a.m., the Rostov flight director informed Aktau's flight manager that an oxygen tank in the passenger cabin had exploded. This explosion reportedly caused passengers to lose consciousness, prompting the crew to request immediate medical assistance upon landing. Emergency teams were swiftly mobilized at Aktau Airport in preparation for the aircraft's arrival. At 11:02 a.m., the pilots made contact with Aktau Airport's air traffic control tower. Despite their efforts, the crew faced significant challenges during their descent. They attempted to land twice but were unable to maintain altitude or stabilize the aircraft. Tragically, at 11:28 a.m., contact with the crew was lost, and moments later, the plane crashed to the ground. This means the plane was hit between 10:30 to 10:53 a.m. Kazakh time by the Russian anti-air defense system. In this scenario, the plane is flying at a significantly higher altitude, rendering the cannons ineffective. Consequently, the system opts to deploy a missile as the optimal weapon for engagement. The missile is launched vertically from its sealed canister. It uses its advanced onboard guidance system to navigate with precision towards the designated target. As the missile approaches, its onboard sensors continue to track the civilian aircraft, which in this case is tragically identified as an Azerbaijani civilian aircraft. The missile carries a 25-kilogram high-explosive warhead. Upon reaching the target, the warhead detonates, releasing an intense explosion. The explosion occurs near the side of the aircraft, causing catastrophic damage to its tail section. The resultant shrapnel penetrates the fuselage, inflicting severe internal structural damage. This devastating impact destabilizes the aircraft, leading to an uncontrollable descent. The severely damaged plane crashes near Aktau Airport, resulting in a tragic loss of life and a devastating outcome for all those on board. Let's take a look at a different case scenario of a Jeju Air Flight 2216. This South Korean airline was granted permission to land from the south on runway 1 northward. But control tower cautions against bird activity, so the aircraft made a slight deviation in flight path. The pilot declares Mayday after it hit a couple of birds, and it was instructed to make a go-around and land on runway 19 southward. It was at this moment the airplane encountered another problem with the landing gear, which did not open. Finally, the plane had to make a belly landing with what was supposedly a landing gear failure because it hit in the middle of the runway and crashed into the elevated localizer antenna and concrete, erupting into a huge fireball, while the tail section remained intact. American Airlines Flight 5342, which we'll refer to as the landing flight, was on its final approach to runway 33. At this stage, called short final, the aircraft was mere moments from landing, flying at an altitude of about 400 feet. This is the most critical phase of landing, where every second counts and pilots are laser-focused on safely bringing the plane down. At the same time, an Army Black Hawk helicopter, identified as PAT-25, was reportedly on a possible training flight. It was flying perpendicular to the flight path of Flight 5342, following the course of the Potomac River. The Potomac River is a designated flight corridor for helicopters, and it's common to see aircraft like this operating in the area. The key difference between the two aircraft in this scenario was their operating rules. The Black Hawk helicopter, PAT-25, was flying under visual flight rules. This means it was required to rely on visual observation of its surroundings to avoid other aircraft. The landing Flight 5342 was operating under instrument flight rules, which give it priority over VFR flights in controlled airspace. This system assumes that VFR aircraft will actively maintain visual separation to avoid conflicts. Moments before the collision, the air traffic control tower at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport called PAT-25 to confirm whether they had the other aircraft in sight. PAT-25 responded that they did. At first glance, this seems like an acknowledgement that they were aware of Flight 5342's presence and were taking steps to avoid it. However, it now seems likely that PAT-25 had mistakenly identified a different aircraft, possibly a departing flight from the same airport, and believed that was the other aircraft referred to by the tower. Tragically, PAT-25 may not have realized that Flight 5342 was descending directly into its path. This misidentification could have led to the Black Hawk failing to adjust its course in time to avoid a collision. We also make original engineering content, so please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos.